Welcome to Moksa Workflow Manager Training Movies. This is exercise number 2, Commission and Approval Task. In the first movie, we showed how to create a new workflow template using an existing template and added a commission task. We also added some placeholders and we set up the additional info fields for the workflow portal. In this second movie, we are going to run this workflow and set the parameters and perform the different tasks in this particular workflow. In Cumulus, we prepared this workflow, so now we are going to run it. In the standard Cumulus sites, the user who is allowed to start a workflow, that user needs the permission $workflow portal in his server permissions. If that person has that permission, from that moment on, he or she will be able to work with the workflow portal. If I click on the workflow portal, I only see a first workflow. Why do I see the first workflow? Well, in the previous example, we defined that for this workflow, only the user Peter could see it, and the other workflow could be seen by people from the design department. If I delete that category and keep it like this, or add Peter or some other user, also those users will be able to see that particular task. So if I go back to my website and I go back to the workflow portal, now you can see that I have two workflows here. One for first training and one for commission and approve. I'm selecting the second one in this case. As we saw before, the workflow configuration starts by creating the name of the workflow and the date of today. We can set a start date. We can have input records. In this workflow, in this example, I'm not going to use import records. And we can have, or we definitely have, participants. So for the design department, I get the list of users that are attached to this particular role. So in this case, I'm selecting from Martin, for design, sorry, I'm selecting this name, and in the next example here I will be selecting Martin from marketing. I can also set an administrator that could be notified in every task if that particular user is to be notified for a task starting, for a task that is delayed, or a task that has been finished correctly. This is a new part. This is the workflow information panel that gives me the additional information fields that I defined in the workflow template. So in the template I had two fields. One was a SKU that we are requesting from the user, and one is the plant. Notice that we don't have the word mandatory here, so we did not make these fields mandatory. If we did add the type mandatory, then we would have here in red mandatory. So let me just enter SKU, and here we can see that we have a drop down. By default, it's nothing is selected, but I can set it, for instance, to Belgium. When we come to instructions, you can see that we have the ability to add the instructions describing to the different participants what they should be doing. Please create flyer for new product. And you can add instruction files. In this example, I will use the multi-file upload, so I can click here and see that I get a drag and drop area to drag and drop the files that I want to upload. So I can select files from my desktop and I can drag and drop them in. Automatically the cataloging process will start, and when it's finished it will show the file or files that I dropped in. Now I can click on the save button and I get a summary of all the files that were added to my workflow. I can see the participants that were selected and the other information that was set. If I forget anything, it will automatically pop up with a message and ask me to complete a part that I might have forgotten. When I submit, the workflow is now sent to the backend of the workflow manager, and the backend of workflow manager, which runs in a Cumulus scheduler task, will check what the different parts of this workflow are and will create this workflow and will kick off the first task. Starting the first task means that the first user in the flow will get an email and will get notified by email that a task needs to be performed. I can wait for such a mail to come. I can go to the mailbox and have a look. The first participant was somebody from design, and I think I selected Bill. So if I select this here and I ask him to check for mail, I can see that there's already one mail coming in. If the mail isn't there, then it could be that it takes a little bit longer, depending on how quickly your new workflow was detected. So if I click on this task, I see that I get dear participant, and I also get my instructions. Remember that we used a placeholder, so please create, and I have a typo here, fly for new product, needs to be flyer of course, and I get a link to the commission task. If I click on this link, it automatically opens my browser and brings me to my task. On the left, I can see my generic instructions for this particular task, and I can see my minimum uploads, maximum uploads, and I can see the instructions, and I have also access to additional documents that might have been provided. And also very important, the workflow information is also available and editable if necessary and if allowed. So all the information that I require to do my job is in one screen available. I can upload a file, so I was asked to create a banner or a flyer. In this case, again, I have the multi-file upload or the single file. I can go in and I can select the file I want to download. The file that I created, let's say that this was the file that I created. I upload it, and as soon as the file is uploaded, I can close. And a couple of seconds later, when it's loaded into the system, it appears into your task. So in this task, you can still at this point add a comment or decide to delete this file. If you say that, I made a mistake, this is the wrong file, you can always delete it, or you can add a comment. If you're not certain of something you put on page 3, you can add that comment, and it will automatically be available for every user in this workflow. When you're finished, you can just click on submit. If you have other files to upload, you can click upload, or if you're not finished but just wanted to add this file, you can click close and come back to this task later. In this case, I'm just going to submit. Now the backend checks if everything that I had to do is performed, and then logs out when that task is finished. If not, it will tell you, it will give you a message that you are not finished with that particular job yet. Automatically now, the next person in the workflow will receive an email. So if we check, we can see that the next person in this workflow was Martin, and Martin received an approval task. Also, if an administrator was defined, then the administrator would get at this point an email telling him that some tasks were performed. So if this point we did not set any administrators, but otherwise I could have received here in my mailbox notification of a task that was finished. Martin has to perform this task, and so Martin can click on the link and get into the workflow manager approval task. In the approval task, as we saw in previous demo movies, has on the left all the information necessary about this particular task to perform this task, the additional instructions, has the workflow additional files, and has the information that was provided in the specific fields for this workflow. This user can now download the file, he can preview it, all the standard Cumulus functionalities are available, and when he's ready, he can approve or reject the file. If there's multiple files, he can approve and reject multiple files. Maybe you notice with the previous example in exercise 1, we also had a submit all and a reject all and an approve all button here. In this example we disabled that, so that means that now we have a much simpler interface with only 2 buttons. I say I will approve this, and when I approve this I will say page 3 was okay, and I click on save. You can see that whatever I chose is registered here in my information window, and the information keeps complete track of every user's comments and approvals and decisions that were taken in this workflow, so you keep informed about this file throughout every step of the workflow. I can now submit. He checks and he says task is submitted, logging out in a moment. So now your task is finished, and that was, for human interaction, the last task of this workflow. If I now have a look at the workflow reporter, in the workflow reporter I go to localhost. If I log in as Peter, I can have a look at recently completed workflows, and I can see that I have my 2 workflows that were recently completed. If I open task mail, this will not do a lot because there are no tasks in progress in this workflow. Same for current task, but you can have a look in the workflow itself. You have a history that tells you who did what for what file in this workflow. If you go to the summary, you can see for this file was finally approved by both, and the tasks were completed by all participants. In the individual tasks, you can see that every status of every task is set to done. You see that one task that we did not physically perform as a participant, one task is the create collection task that is at the end of this workflow, creating a collection basket that you can open in Sites. So if I have a look here, I will see that in this task we got this file coming in. and you can even go and have a look at the details of every remark that was created by the participants. If I close this, I can see the email, and this is the email that Martin received. If I click on this link, it will bring me to the workflow task to see what this is. Well, actually this is a collection, so not a task in which I have to perform anything, but this brings me to the file. So this way you can distribute, you can send on the approved design to whomever has to maybe print it or use it. So this was another example of Workflow Manager. Please check out the other exercises or contact us if you have any questions. Thank you for joining us.